Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and today the Welsh and I are going to talk about the 10 most undervalued early to mid-round starting pitchers, because pitching has become, well, a bit of a Rubik's Cube the last few years, and sometimes you can cheat and take the stickers off, and sometimes you can't. But Welsh and I are going to try our best here to solve the puzzle that is the pitcher category in 2024. Welsh, I know that we've talked a lot about our pitching strategy the last few years. Last year, I was very much in the let's buy in bulk, let's let the top guys fade. Feels like more than ever, some of the top guys just aren't even there. It's not nearly as deep as it once was. It feels like we're going to be buying in bulk again. And I think this group that we're talking about really encapsulates some of those names that I think are really going to help people assemble rotations, because now it's not just about having that one guy at the top in fantasy or maybe even two. It's about really having depth of that rotation, because guys are going to miss time. People aren't throwing 200 innings anymore. Those days are long gone. So we want to get the quality, and you think some of these names on this list today can give us that?
Yeah, I think what we're looking at is primary SP2s and SP3s. Maybe that's even the way for you guys to consume the title of this is undervalued SP2s and 3s, because I think parts of the upper list of who the guys we're going to talk about, the very first guy would be actually a great number 2. If you're talking about RPV, you're talking about relative position value of that spot. An SP2, what do they actually perform at? So I think we're going to have the first 4 or 5 work really well as SP2s or solid undervalued SP2s, and then we get into the SP3 market. Because, there's a bunch of different ways. The pocket aces strategy, I don't want to say it's dead, because there'll be someone out there that's like, well, so let me tell you, fling.
And that's exactly what they sound like.
And they'll be like Gambit. They'll be like, fling, fling, pocket aces. But it's dead. It's dead. Like, nobody does it anymore. Yeah,
I wasn't ready for the X-Men reference this early in the show. There you go.
X-Men 97.
I was just watching the first one. I was on the other day where he's like, Cyclops, Storm, and what's your name? And he turns to Patrick Stewart. He goes, what's your name? Wheels? That's a great line.
It's a great line. X-Men that's my all-time thing. We need a graphics team where if I ever do that, we can just light up a card and pocket aces. But the whole point was positionally, like pocket aces are ideally, it's kind of dead, but you're wanting to live in a top probably 12 to 15 SP, and then you're going to most likely look for at least 2 in that SP 20 to 35 range. So we're going to be talking about some of those undervalued guys here.
And draft season is already upon us, folks, and we are here. Draft prep is on, and fantasypros.com/draft kit has you covered. The draft kit is free. It's available right now, so run, don't walk, to fantasypros.com/draft kit today and start utilizing all the tools here at Fantasy Pros. And of course, make sure you sync your leagues as well. Make sure you're utilizing all the tools, not just for the draft, but for the in-season management as well that we have on Fantasy Pros. It is huge. It's a game changer. So sync your league for free today over at Fantasy Pros. All your leagues and all your places. And remember, you can set all your lineups from one spot using the Fantasy Pros app. That's pretty amazing. Let's start with the first guy on our list, and it's Blake Snell of the, I don't know, because it is 2:22 p.m. on the 6th of February, and he still doesn't have a team. A pretty good season for Blake Snell. Oh, man, I still don't have a place to play.
I got to find a home.
He sounds a lot like the guy who wants to have pocket aces. I'm just saying. Last year, coming off a season with 234 strikeouts, he did walk 99 guys, though, so still some up and down. But this is a guy who has now 2 Cy Youngs to his resume, and then a lot of ifs in between. And I think that's kind of why you're seeing the ADP you're seeing for Blake Snell. I imagine at some point, though, it's going to tick up. Right now, the ECR has him at 70 overall. But at the same time, Welsh, I think when he does sign, if he signs with a contender, you're going to see this ADP change. What's your take on Blake Snell's value regardless of the landing spot?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. He's definitely being undervalued because people are like, well, I don't know where he is. And I think a lot of people are going to end up making that case of like, well, wherever he goes, probably not. Like Blake Snell is a unique character across the board. As many people have noted in this offseason, we had this really hilarious debate that happened. It was almost an argument fight of our friends Nick Pollock and Eno Saris, where Nick was just not about that Blake Snell life and Eno was about that Blake Snell life. And what came from a lot of this was the walk numbers are worrisome, but it's also part of his strategy and how he attacks. So it's not going to help your whip or anything like that, but it's an upper tier strikeout. I mean, he has had 6 straight years of over 30% K percentage. He just had a 2.25 ERA, 2 straight years of an expected ERA that was under 4, which is great. This is a more mature pitcher, and he made some big changes, specifically the changeup. That was something everyone was very critical about. Threw it 5% of the time in 2022. This past year, it became his 3rd most used pitch at 18% of the time. And guess what? Blake Snell, 3 of 4 pitches used, which are all over 10%, had a 46 or higher % whiff rate. I know a lot of people will talk specifically in like swinging strike rate, and we know the Ks are up there, but I just would like to point out 50 plus is elite. You rarely see. I think the only guy that had a higher whiff percentage on a pitch that I'm recalling off the top of my brain was Senga's Ghost Fork. He's got 2 that are over 50 and another that's at 46. So it's high strikeout percentage. He has learned his usage. And in theory, with the teams that are out there, there's a lot of markets that would work well. If he did go to his hometown in Seattle, we would love that. We could manage with the Angels. I don't think it's like an inferior ballpark if he were to go there. So you chase your strikeouts. Hopefully he goes to a team that can put up some wins. But he's being undervalued for the strikeouts that you get and for all the critical stuff about the walks. Low 2 ERA, we're going to take. Yeah, Blake Snell might be criminally underrated.
Like, I don't think I'm going to be chasing the sub 3 ERA, but I do agree also that, I think that not only Blake Snell, I think has, figured some things out last year, maybe some more consistency going forward, but he's also not the kind of guy personality-wise that I think is going to press. Sometimes you see these guys, are free agents, sign big deals, and they press a little bit. I don't get that sense with Blake Snell that he is going to be worried too much about that. I think he's going to go home, hang out, play video games, go pitch, and he's just going to be Blake Snell no matter what.
Stream. I don't know if he still does it. I don't know if you know that he's a streamer. He's buddies with our friend
Nick
Sport.
Pollock. I know you and I both did PitchCon a couple weeks ago, which was great. If you haven't, you can go donate over there. The ALS Drive, I'm still sure they're taking money over there for that. But I did a little roast of Nick Pollock, and I said, he looks like the guy who runs a New York coffee shop, and if you've been there too long, sitting there doing work, he asks you to either order another latte or leave. Don't you think that's the look of Nick Pollock? Where he's like, hi, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, you've been here for 2 hours and you've only had 1 coffee, so I'm going to need you to order another one.
Or maybe you're kind of calling him a hipster, I think is what you're doing. You're kind of
I think. I love you, Nick. I can't wait to have you back on the show, buddy. Yeah. All right, let's get to Nick always comes on.
I'm sure he's excited to come back. He'd be like,
oh, thrilled. I'm excited for our next guy, which is Zach Eflin. Look at that transition. Always pay attention, folks, to whenever the Rays get a reclamation project. I mean, I don't know. We've been doing this for like a decade now, and it's always the same thing. So Eflin's a guy with a 4 ERA in his career. All of a sudden, what happens? He goes to Tampa. That ERA gets knocked down by half a run. He has an incredible run of 186 strikeouts and 177 innings. He wins 16 games, pitches in a good ballpark. He had the whip of 1.02. I mean, the xFIP was 3.12, so it's not fluky stuff here we're talking about. We're talking about a guy who really made some great strides, and right now in the ECR, Eflin is still just barely outside of the top 20 pitchers, and to me that makes him a value.
It does make him a value, and one of the wild things have been projections in general. I might be screwing this number up, but guess what? You guys can go and double check it out. If you go over to Fangraphs, you can check out via their different projections, the auction calculator. And I believe Zach Eflin, via the BAT, which is Derek Carty's projections, is like the 12th best dollar return of any single pitcher. So essentially lining him up as the 12th. I believe ATC has him between 11 and 13. Regardless, he's projecting out as a top 15 pitcher in every single projection system. By the way, ATC was voted the best, who we had Ariel on. Go check out the projections episode. He was voted the most accurate system of an aggregate or of any. Derek Carty was the best singular, non-aggregated system. So I am referencing both the 2 best on the market. If you look at projections, they've got him, BAT has him at around 8.5 K per 9, but under 2 walks per 9, but not projecting a big jump in innings, which is interesting because he just put up 177, but really great K minus walk percentage, 3% walk rate last year, 26.5 strikeout rate. He overperformed his expected ERA, so he had a 3.5 ERA. The expected was 3. And as you mentioned, the Rays just do great things with people. They like to add cutters, and that actually might kind of open up the ball game even more if the usage goes up. He ended up using that more this past year at 26%. His curveball was the big strikeout option, but this guy will throw 5 or 6 pitches. They're going to manage the innings properly. Great defense behind him. And like you said, the Rays work magic. Every projections love him. He's a safe option. Guess what I like a lot this year? I like, even though we just talked about Blake Snell, I like low walk guys. Logan Webb, George Kirby, and Zach Eflin. Because if you have one minor change and you go from a low, like let's just say, I know people want K percentage or K per 9, but let's just go with K percent or K per 9. If you have like an 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings and you're super low walk, if you jump over 9, you make one big adjustment, you might go from being a solid pitcher to an elite pitcher because of ratios, innings, wins, strikeouts. So I love guys like that, and that's who Eflin is, and he is very undervalued. At the end of the day,
that's good pitching. Good pitching is not putting guys on base, not trying to work out of jams, especially if you don't have the dominant stuff, quote unquote, for strikeouts. You know, if you can limit that, like the Logan Webbs of the world and some of these other guys, you are going to put yourself in a better position to win. If you're a tough pitcher to hit to begin with, and you can limit your walks, you're going to have success in the big league level if you have all the other intangible things there. Before we get to the next guy, too, don't forget, it's not just time to start mock drafting. It's time to really start getting your leagues together. And Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Create or join a fantasy baseball commissioner league. Invite your friends, invite your enemies, and dominate your draft this season. Fantrax's free MLB League Manager is the most customizable, easy to use, and feature-rich platform in the industry. If there is anything lacking in your current Fantasy League Manager, Fantrax likely has it. So go deep with the ultimate keeper dynasty league options there. Create a simple redraft league or even customize a best ball league up to 2,000 teams coming from another service. No problem. Fantrax can import your current leagues and customize them as needed. And fantasy sports doesn't sleep. Neither does Fantrax. They're up all night. They're all over the caffeine. They've got seasons running 365 days a year. Many have already renewed, scheduled their drafts, continued trading of players, draft picks, etc. It's always running all the time, not like some other places. So there's a reason why Fantrax is the choice of fantasy players everywhere. So make it the permanent home for all of your fantasy leagues. Sign up for free today, and you can be entered into the Fantrax Game Day experience, where Fantrax will send you and your league mates on an MLB game trip of your choice. Simply go to fantrax.com/fantasypros to sign up today. That's fantrax.com/fantasypros. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. Joe Ryan is going to have a home on a lot of my fantasy teams. I know last year was kind of a tale of two halves. The first half, a 3.70 ERA over his first 18 starts. The guy was fantastic. I know I had him in a bunch of spots. I was loving life. Strikeout rate was high, over 10.4 Ks per 9. Then the second half came, the ERA ballooned to 6. We know we missed some time there with an injury, only 54 innings in the second half too. Now the strikeout rate was still high, but that whip ballooned to 1.482. So Joe Ryan, bounce back candidate, Welsh? I say yes. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, bounce back might even not be the term. Like he already kind of bounced in. He's just going to be more dribbly bounces that are coming. Last year, he ended up getting rid of that changeup and no longer being like a 5 to 6 type of pitcher. 4 pitches he honed in on. 3 of them he threw double-digit percentage of the time. The 3 that he threw double digits or more, they all had an increase in whiff percentage. And what's the one he lowered? His slider, which he dropped a little bit, being ineffective. That was actually the pitch he threw the second most. So he incorporated a sweeper. The split finger was a big change. That almost doubled in strikeout percentage. He was elite, almost top 10 percentile of the league in strikeout rate, 29.3. That's a big K percentage. Low walks again, 5.1. He overperformed his expected ERA by a full run. So that means he had a 4.5 ERA, which is stinky, but an expected 3.53, which would have been second best of his career. I love what the Twins have just in general been doing. He found a way to cover every point of the zone. I think he needs to get that sweeper a little bit out more, because if you go and look at a zone chart, fastballs up top, split fingers on the bottom. The main slider is over on this kind of inside corner, and the sweeper wasn't hitting enough outside. So I think that's like maybe an easy fix to being even more effective for a guy that's already massively high on strikeouts. And he's not a burner. He's actually similar to, who the hell were we just talking about?
We were just talking about
Eflin. Yeah, Eflin. Eflin throws around 92. That's how Joe Ryan is. But it's command. It's being able to pinpoint those pitches with not having any rough walks, 5% walk rate. I love Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan is an example of the player that has the low walks, with great, probably one of the best strikeout numbers besides Blake Snell on this list. The only problem was the ERA overperformed what it should have done. So that's maybe a key tell that there might be a lot of improvement this year. And where he's going, what did we say? It's like around 20 something of SPs or 25
of the SPs. Yeah, right now on the consensus, looking at Joe Ryan, he is 24th starting pitcher right now ranked. So
I mean, legit. I think this is the last 10%.
Exactly. I think he's closer to 15 than he is to 25. And right now you're getting him closer to 25. So this might be the last time you get that, because if, let's say he was hurt for the whole second half, Welsh, he's a top 20 pitcher, right? Let's say if he didn't have those bad 11 starts that really dragged everything down a little bit, absence makes the heart grow fonder. You and I both know we'd be looking and saying, oh, well, he's healthy, everything's fine. You know what? Forget it. Let's just jump back in. So I'm not going to let it bother me too much. I think this is the last time you get a discount like that on Joe Ryan. The next guy on our list, the fourth guy we're going to talk about here, is Eury Perez of the Miami Marlins. Perez last year dominated the minor leagues, then came up into the big league level and certainly made his presence known. 91 innings. He was only 5-6, but he did have 108 strikeouts and a 3.15 ERA and a 1.13 whip. Now, some of the secondary deeper numbers there will suggest that the ERA should have been a little higher. That's fair. He's a young pitcher. Innings will be a question, but the upside is enormous. I think the Marlins team, we all agree, is going to be, another work in progress, even though they overachieved last year. Do you think that Eury Perez is a little too much hype, or do you think he is one of these guys that's still technically undervalued despite having never pitched a full season in the big leagues yet?
Yeah, I still think undervalued is the way to look at it. Now, the worry, or the reason you can make the argument on the other side, is he's still young. They might, how much are they going to limit innings? He's only projected, and again, I guess you don't want to cherry pick projections, but there's also things that I'm not sure projections do super well. I'm not sure I would pinpoint innings pitched as something that I'm going to, what is their marker off of just maybe baseline percentages? Because they're projecting him around 122. They maintained him pretty well last year. I think he could legit get to one. I don't know why he couldn't get to 150 unless they had really big injury worries, which really don't exist out there. Projections got him over 10K per nine, which is elite. I think they have a hard time projecting overall wins, but you're looking at one of the bigger strikeout guys in the league. It was almost top 10 percentile of overall K percentage, 28.9. Whiff percentage, top 7% in the league. Good chase rate, keeps low batting average, and is a fireball fastball guy that can throw at really any point in the zone. Average almost 98. It was 97.5, but huge secondary pitches. He doesn't get the strikeouts off the fastball, gets off the slider and the curveball. And as we know, this organization develops changeups phenomenally with an offseason. Maybe working with Sandy. Sandy hasn't got anything else to do. Tommy John, he had a 46% whiff rate on that changeup last year. I wouldn't be shocked to see it jump up. This is another pitcher. 3 of his 4 pitches, 46 or higher whiff percentage, and has less of a walk issue than you have with a Blake Snell. So I think the only thing that holds people back are the innings projection. I'm just not going to let that hurt me. Maybe it could hurt a little bit in head-to-head. Roto, I'm still golden, but I'm less worried than everybody else is. If the Marlins are winning some games, he's going to keep going, and he's easily can put up top 20 SP numbers this year.
The next guy on our list last year was a darling in the fantasy baseball analyst community, but he got off to a very rough start. In fact, in April, he had an ERA above 6, but after that, it was really smooth sailing for Kyle Bradish of the Orioles. Now, Bradish finished the season very strong. 168 total innings, same number of strikeouts there, just 44 walks, a terrific K to walk ratio, 2.83 ERA, 1.04 whip. So Bradish is in a good spot here now. And now that Corbin Burns, who, we could talk about that real briefly too. I mean, you're getting a real number one at the front of that rotation, takes a lot of pressure off Bradish, off Grayson Rodriguez. Now they could just let Corbin Burns be the ace and just continue to do their thing. But Bradish, I know a lot of people were panicking last year in April. Once he got right, my God, was he good.
Yeah, you got massive value if people were cutting him and they were freaking out.
A lot of people did.
Worrying.
They freaked out. They cut. They trade. It was bad, and rightfully so. A 6 ERA, people are going to start to panic. No offense.
And you could also worry bullpen without Felix, it's a little bit worse. But they did bring in Kimbrel. Cano is going to be put back into that non-full-on leverage situation, so I still think that's good. Less pressure with Corbin Burns there. This was a solid strikeout guy, decently low walks. still, even though he overperformed his expected ERA, he had a sub-3 ERA, it was still into the like mid-3s. And what he did was he just made a concerted effort, as a lot of teams should do as you evaluate pitches. The previous year, the pitch he threw the most was a fastball. It had like a 17% whiff rate. Fastballs usually don't have really good whiff rates on it. And then he was solid on sliders and curveballs. By the way, whiff rates are not just like swinging strikes, but also just people burning through pitches. So what did he do this past year? He made the top pitch be the slider. And we've actually seen players find a benefit to this. Hunter Green kind of revamped his career by being able to throw a slider as much or more than the fastball. And that's what Bradish ended up doing. So he threw over 30% of the time a slider that upticked his whiff percentage, a 36.5% whiff rate, which was higher than the year before. And then he used the fastball and the sinker to set everything else up, and then still drop a curveball in that also had a 35% whiff rate, which was a way big improvement from the year prior. So he implements ground balls. He doesn't walk a ton, gets good strikes overall, gets strikeouts. You've got more support in the staff. You got a great young team that's going to help defensively. All the things work great, but he's a boring name that people are like, I don't know about Bradish. That's why he's undervalued, because he's not being given the dues for, I think, where he's been.
Maybe it just
before.
takes people longer to get on board with the Orioles because they've been so much of a non-participant in the last 10 years, really. So,
but they've had great development. That's the thing that
they
that
have
I don't
now,
think people have
but
caught
not in the
up.
past. I mean, I think it's hard to break the cycle of the Dylan Bundys and the Jake Arrietas and the Kevin Gausmans of all these people back in the past that you had that you didn't develop. And now people are a little skittish, and I get it, but you shouldn't be when it comes to
You gave Orioles fans absolute anxiety by bringing up those names. Just want to point out. They're like, everybody. Oh, God, Arrieta.
Well, I mean, hey.
Bundy?
It's all true. I mean, he was the number one pitching prospect once upon a time. I'm old enough to remember that. I'm also old enough to remember when I was telling everybody last year to draft Joe Musgrove, regardless of the fact that he dropped a weight on his toe. Nobody cares. Like, he's going to be fine, right? And he was. He only missed like 2 starts in April. Like, who cares? His falling draft stock last year was absurd. Now, I will say this. I am a little bit concerned about going into this year, because now when you start throwing in shoulder issues, I understand they said, hey, we expect him to be ready for open the season. Everything's fine. But I've heard that noise before. Musgrove, when he was back, was Musgrove. 97 innings, 97 Ks, just 21 walks, 3.05 ERA, a 1.14 whip. Now, the Padres have a little less firepower without Juan Soto around, but Musgrove, to me, is one of these guys. I am on the fence. I haven't made my final decision on how I feel yet. I think it really comes to roster construction, which, by the way, you should practice your roster construction by running drafts and running all the draft simulations over at fantasypros.com/mock, and you can do 10 mocks in a half hour. Like, the simulator runs so fast. So again, fantasypros.com/mock. So use Draft Wizard to see what kind of pitching staff you're going to put together. But Welsh, what do you think here about Joe Musgrove?
I am not on the fence. I am all in. There's no build I need to think about with Joe Musgrove. So we're in this territory. You don't really want Musgrove as like your SP2. But boy, I think he's an insane advantage of an SP3 if you can do it. I mean, there's only so many, and so, you can have this argument of like, what is my roster?
At the 29th pitcher off like an ECR, or maybe going off the board, like I'm looking right now on fantasypros.com/MLB rankings, you could see the pitchers and where they're ranked right now in the ECR. Musgrove's at 29. He's ahead of Verlander and Bybee, and he's behind Justin Steele and Bradish. That feels about right to me.
Yeah, and my point is like, he could be at SP2, but from an RPV standpoint, this is the SP3 of SP3s, because the other thing you mentioned, like, there may be worries here or there, but I mean, he improved his fastball last year, started throwing a changeup more, 3 of 5 pitches, over 30% whiff rate. He still commands the ball. I mean, there's a big key to a lot of these undervalued pitchers, mostly outside of Snell. There's not big walks, 5% walk rate, almost 25% K percentage, an expected ERA that's with his ERA. So that just shows stability. I'm in for all of it. And Schilt had said that he's going to have 0 restrictions. He is good to go. So there's some injury risk. And I think that might be floating around for some people. But when Musgrove is on, he could be a top 15 pitcher. So this is a guy, when you want to really focus on this undervalued stuff, this is a guy that represents all of it. There's a young players like Eury Perez, where if the innings go up, high Ks, that's all great. But Musgrove has done this before. He has been this before. He's not too old.
He was in the lead.
He's still
for the Cy
revamping
Young
pitches
on the betting board for quite some time 2 years ago. Like, I mean, he was at the very top of that board for weeks, if not months, if memory serves. So you're right. If you're going to bet on somebody, this is a guy to bet on because you know what the upside is. And I think you nailed it. You're so smart. You're not just a pretty face, Welsh.
Oh,
Is a
with all the
3.
gray
I love
hair.
it. As a 2, it makes me a little skittish, a little worried. Number 7 on our list today of some of the mid-round pitching values we've got. This guy is hotter than Hansel right now. Cole Ragans of the Kansas City Royals. The Royals, by the way, who just locked up Bobby Witt to a very long-term contract. Good for him. Nothing like $288 million guaranteed to make you feel warm and fuzzy inside. But Ragans is a player that obviously last year really, was one of the big pickups down the stretch. The fastball's at 96. It's the changeup, though, that has everybody talking. A 35.6 whiff percentage on that. So he is a very popular, trendy pick. And he made your list, so you're buying into the trend.
Well, I think the big thing to talk about, too, when you're talking about like undervalued is like, who are the people that everybody gets excited about? And what does that value end up being? Tariq Skubal is an example of a player that was wildly great coming off of the injury in a short sample size last year. And he's going off at like SP10. Ragans is a guy that absolutely popped when he went to the Royals in the tune of a 4.5 mile per hour increase on his fastball. He was throwing at 92 the year before, went up to 40 here. And I think it was the uptick in the slider, them letting him throw the slider, because I think that was the issue with the Rangers. They weren't. That ended up being the highest whiff percentage of any pitch he ended up throwing. So he became this new pitcher with the Royals. Now, what's his biggest fault? It's walks. That is a different with him and Tariq Skubal. This is a guy that did walk guys over 10% of the time, but he was a completely different pitcher as a starter. The ERA, expected ERA, all plays in. The fastball looks dominant. He's got 4 great pitches, 5 actually really that are all throwing double-digit percentage at the time, but you're on a not super exciting team. Why we do this is when you're looking for high strikeout guys with big potential. I'm actually surprised Ragans isn't higher on this list. So I think from this perspective, when Ragans is an SP3, he is an undervalued because of what he could potentially. He could blow up in your face with the walks and Royals could stink and all those things can happen. But with all of the chances we've got to take, this is great in SP3. Usually we have to pay for these guys as SP2. So you want to talk about undervalue, taking your risk shots. Cole Ragans definitely fits that mold.
Next is one of our favorite guys from leading off last year, Merrill Kelly of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Welsh, career high in K per 9 percentage, back-to-back years now with ERAs sub 3.5, whips under 1.2, 2 years in a row here. So it seems like Kelly's been a guy these last 2 seasons that has really settled into a groove here and probably continues to be one of these guys that does get overlooked. I love when you put him on the list because to me, he is like the quintessential undervalued guy. I can't remember how many times last year we're like, yeah, Merrill's going to go out there and he's going to, put up a quality start and he's going to keep you in the game. And, in the second half too for the Diamondbacks, when they made that run into the playoffs there, I mean, he was just steady Eddie. And I think that's something that fantasy rotations might need more than ever. And I love that you put him on the list today.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed exactly where we're going. So check this out. I think this is interesting. Here's a projection.
Check this out. Check this out, everybody.
This pitcher, 147 projected innings, 8.7 K per 9, a half decent 2.65 walk per 9, and essentially a 4 ERA. That's the first pitcher. The next pitcher, Merrill Kelly, 160 innings projected for higher, 8.56 K per 9, essentially the same. Little bit of a higher walk rate, 3.39, and his ERA projected much higher than what he's performed over the last 2 years. It's 4.47 projected, yet he's had 2 straight years of having a 3.5. That first pitcher was Justin Verlander, and a lot of people still want to get in the Justin Verlander business. You just said it before, and that's the big takeaway I would do with this. Merrill's just undervalued. He's just an undervalued guy. He is on a Diamondbacks team that scores tons of runs, even though I guess they were kind of a weirdly negative run to runs given up last year. But you still have this team that is going to run, score runs, multiple gold glovers on it. He's going to pitch more innings than projected. He's got a good shot to walk into all of those wins. He gets some strikeouts, doesn't walk a bunch of people. He is just a good baseline stabilizing SP that annually just gets overlooked because he's older, he's kind of boring, he doesn't pop anywhere else. But these are the type of guys that round out. You know what? You go get Cole Ragans as your SP3, balance him out at SP4 with a Merrill Kelly. That makes him not only undervalued for where you draft him, but it can actually make him be more undervalued by what he can stabilize with the rest of your rotation. So yes, he doesn't pop any specific place, but like I said, he's going to get more win opportunities than a lot of other guys. He's got a great defense behind him. He's got a fast, speedy offense led by Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte that are going to support him. There's a lot to like about Merrill Kelly, but he keeps, what did you say? It was like SP, it's like 40? 45, 50, something like that?
It's kind of ridiculous when you think 39 is where he is right now. Yeah. So he's 2 spots ahead of the next guy, and the word stable is not one that you would use to describe Carlos Rodon. I don't think that's a good word in the vocabulary there. Missed most of last year. He only turned in 64 innings total and a 6.85 ERA along with it. If you remember when he did eventually pitch, I remember 2 starts specifically in September. One where he had 10 strikeouts in 7 innings against the Pittsburgh Pirates there, and things went very well. And then 2 starts later, his final start of the year, gave up 8 earned runs and 0 outs in that 0. So that's a tough one for me. Carlos Rodon, I get it. I understand. It's like, hey, once you get out of the top 40, you're throwing darts, but to me, 41 is very high. I understand a couple years ago, the guy, turned in back-to-back really good seasons there. I get it, but he has been such an enigma for so long. Mitch Keller's going after him. Michael King's going after him. I'd rather make investments in those guys. But why is Rodon a guy that you think people should pay attention to in drafts?
Well, I think the main thing is just where the return can get us to. And it's risky, but let's go back to, just for a second, we're going to go back to the bat. And we're going to look at, actually, we're on Steamer real quick. Well, we'll do Steamer here for a second because this will really make my point home. Steamer projections using the auction calculator puts Carlos Rodon out at a almost $20 value. The 14th SP, higher than Logan Webb, higher than Corbin Burns, higher than Max Fried. Now, I'll just do it live on here. What do you want, ATC or the bat?
Give me whatever floats your boat. I'm good. I like everything.
You're just like,
you know how much I love projections anyway. I'm such a
well, I mean, that is definitely part of the conversation here. So when you get a little bit more granular, we're pushing back a little bit. Rodon now on ATC is a $7 projection. And I think what some of the worries are is where the performance was last year, but a fully healthy Carlos Rodon. So you can see there's a really wide variance here, but he did not have a decrease in the fastball, which is a positive. His slider was literally the same, 85.4, high whiff rate. It's health. It's health with him. There is
but it's always been health with him. Out there 2 years, it's been health.
Okay, but sometimes we have to consider that undervalued players can also have massive risk. And that's
sure,
what
I just don't know if he's undervalued enough. I guess that's my point.
Okay, but what was the SP?
It's not. He's right now over on FantasyPros in the ECR. He is the 41st pitcher, and the next guy we're going to talk about is at 42, and I'm going to take that next guy every single time and twice on Sunday.
And that might be the case. Rodon is motivated. His pitches are still in line. It is the health that's always in question. Like I mentioned, you've got really great run support that is going to be behind him with Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. Wins might be there. The strikeouts should end up being there. But the bad performance showed its face early on last year. But prior to this crappy little run he had in 2023, he had 2 straight years of a 33 or higher % walk percentage, an expected ERA in the 2.6s, walks that were 2 to 3% lower than it was last year. So this could just blow up and he's done and he's completely done. But, you got a guy that is finally healthy, motivated, Yankee support, anything outside the top 30, I think you can take shots. Carlos Rodon, when good and healthy, is a top 20 SP. That's the major question. So why is he undervalued? Because of where that return can go, similar to Joe Musgrove. Why is he ranked where he is? Massive injury risk. Way more of a risk, by the way, than Joe Musgrove. So I want Joe Musgrove on every single team.
Oh,
but I've taken Rodon all over the place because where can you find 30% K percentage pitchers outside SP30?
You almost said 30 plus starts, and I was going to have to come over and reach to the camera.
But 30% K percentage or more. You can't, and you don't. You don't find that anywhere outside the top 30 SPs, or it's very minimal. Rodon, you can.
Yeah. Just looking through the games pitched for Carlos Rodon right now.
Oh, you're going to be mean now.
I'm not going to be mean. I mean, in 2022, he made 31 starts. It was great. He was brilliant. The year before in 2021, I sat on this show here, and he had a really good spring, and I kept telling everybody, hey, it cost you nothing to draft Carlos Rodon. and he returned a great season, 185 strikeouts and 132 innings. But even that great season was missed time. He did miss more than half a dozen starts. So that's my thing. I like Rodon. It's not enough a discount for me. And the guy
I think 140
innings,
innings from him, based on who he's been in the past, will return plus some the value
in
where you
season-long
drafted.
roto. Yes, I play in more head-to-head formats, so the head-to-head, when you're missing that guy for a month, it kicks you right in the rear end.
Or you miss
really
him in the
does.
playoffs. That's the bigger
or
fear.
even worse down the stretch. So, or maybe even worse than that, giving up 8 earned runs without getting it out in your last start of the season. That would be poor. Anyway,
Maybe.
I teased it before. Who's the guy I'm going to take every single time over Carlos Rodon? It's another Minnesota Twin. It's Bailey Ober. Oh, I wrote about him in the Black Book. I did all the pitcher profiles. Go check it out on Amazon right now. It's out there right now. Welsh and myself, Kelly Kirby, all of your favorite people contributing this year. But look, my big takeaway with Ober was the 5-to-1 strikeout to walk rate. I mean, the guy was just brilliant. 144 innings last year. He was tough to square up. He only had 7.8 hits per 9. He had 9.1 K per 9, a 1.8 walk per 9. The guy was awesome. The 3.43 ERA was there. Now the FIP was a little higher at 3.96, but again, I think this is still a pitcher who you haven't seen the best out of yet, and that's what makes me excited for Bailey Ober. And he made the list that you put together, so you must be excited too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I slept a little early, like in the early, like November-ish range. I do a lot of focus, by the way. My stuff in the Black Book is all infield and then a lot of strategy stuff. So outfielders, starting pitchers end up coming to me a little bit later as I continue to do my work. But Bailey Ober is just one of those guys that pops, especially like early NFBC drafts. You started to see him go really good solid whiff percentages where it shows like 27, 29, 32 on his most used pitches. He's low velocity, 91, but it's built on command. 3 straight years of walk percentage that was top 10% in the league. And an interesting thing, though the strikeout numbers, 25% K percentage, don't look insane, the chase rate, so I just mentioned the whiff rate was 28.7, which was like top 30 percentile of the league. His chase rate of guys chasing on him, 33.5, which was top 9 percentile in the league. So he's got guys just flying all over, and you do that by pitching to solid command, not walking a lot of guys. 3.5 ERA. We've seen the Twins do really good stuff on just overall pitching development. I'm here for it, and I'm here for, he did a slight alteration this year of throwing his changeup over his slider, and I think that made his slider maybe even a little bit more effective. So I'm here for Bailey Ober. I love these guys with that low walk, solid innings, get your wins. I love these type of guys, and he is free 99.
Yeah, that's a good price last time I checked. So,
Yep.
Some great names on the list here that Welsh has put together. Again, we agree on most of them, but we like to hear from you. Who do you agree with? Who are you in on? You like Bailey Ober? You think Carlos Rodon is just the right price? I want to hear from you guys. Drop your comments below in the YouTube channel. If you haven't already, subscribe to Fantasy Pros MLB, because it's the best baseball YouTube channel on the planet right now. Plus, we're going to be every single day when the season starts, as always, with Leading Off with Welsh and myself, and all the Peanuts and the Cracker Jacks joining us every single day live. You can live join us, ask us questions, have some fun with us. We talk fantasy, we talk betting, we talk baseball, we talk everything. Maybe some X-Men stuff will be in there too. You just never know with us, but this is a great list. And also here on the channel, when you subscribe and drop your comments below and ring the bell for notifications too, because we've got the short form content, also the top 10 lists, so many fun things, big guests. We just had Ariel Cohn on, we have Vlad Sedler on too, the best and brightest minds of the fantasy baseball community, and us. We're here too. So again, we want to hear from you. Drop your comments on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to Fantasy Pros MLB. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For the Welsh, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. Nice throw of the card. Well done.